Leadership isn't just a title, it's a revolution. Hi, I'm Nkoyo Effiong Lewis, your guide through the real, raw, and relentless challenges of leading change in a world that often resists it. If you're a bold, audacious leader, tired of the status quo, and ready to make a real impact, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Leadership Revolt, where we disrupt outdated norms, reimagine what's possible, and lead with courage, clarity, and conviction. Systems empower bold decisions. If you are new to me, I want you to be very clear that Nkoyo is actively involved in helping people take audacious steps. That is what we do. This is about leading audaciously. It's about turning audacious ideas into actual impact. That's what I'm here for. If your idea is small, if you're trying to tinker when we need to be transforming things, I'm probably not the strategist for you. This podcast may not be for you because I actually believe we need bold, disruptive change. Technology is here. It's iterating. I had an opportunity to speak with some attorneys earlier this week about AI in the law. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, AI is not going to replace jobs. Like people who use AI are going to replace people who don't. And I think that is super cute and comforting. But I've shared this on a previous podcast. Also, you can go back in the files. I'm consistent. I am not entirely sure that is the case. I actually do believe that the technology can replace us. And in some instances, I'm a big proponent for us allowing it to replace us so we can be freed up to do things that are higher order thinking, living, evolving type of work. So I think it's very important that we recognize that with the way that the rate of change is accelerating and with technology advancing so rapidly and there being such a rift between people who have access to all of this innovation and those who don't. There's a great quote out there that's like, the future is here. It's just like people don't have equal access to it. The greater that is, the more dangerous and perilous all of our lives are, because hurt people, which we could see in this previous election. And we need to make sure that we are providing people with pathways and opportunities to even just make sure that their basal needs are met. Let alone that they can self-actualize in the way that all of us as human beings are designed to do. So the second point I want to take home is that systems empower bold decisions. And I know sometimes people are like, I don't want to have a system because I'm like creative and I get all those types of things. And I have myself in that way. Like, oh, I can't write on this day because like, oh, now I've like created this constraint and now my creativity is gone. Spoiler alert, creativity loves constraint. It loves constraint. We actually need to put our vision inside of some sort of constraint so that we can make sure we move it forward. When it's too loosey-goosey, nothing happens. It's very honest. Like, there's another really great book, 12-Week Year. I always get the title wrong. And as I talk about is that most people will hit their goals in the last quarter of the year because there's a huge time constraint. It's like I said I was going to do this by the end of the year. I wasted 9 months, but these final 3, I'm like locked in and I'm doing the things that I need to do to move it forward. I myself, I'm very much deadline driven. I know I'm in an industry with other attorneys who are also very deadline driven. I think lawyers actually are like the biggest procrastinators that I've ever actually met. And we normalize it in a way that's not healthy, but that's another podcast conversation. But the constraint is very helpful for us to get to be effective. I know for me, when I need to really get stuff done, I put myself on a timer because when that time tells me I've got 90 minutes to get this done and that's it, surprisingly, whatever work I had to do gets done in 90 minutes. And there's actually a law about that. I forget the name of it, but essentially, however long you say it takes to do something is how long it takes. So you got to give yourself the constraint sometimes. And that is what we need for our bold ideas and visions. They need a constraint. They need some sort of framework within which they exist that allows us then to move forward to actualize things quickly. And that is what strong governance does. We have here in my consulting company, Banisong Solutions, we have the impact triad framework. We focus on 3 things very specifically that we believe actually uh, increase impact rapidly and consistently and sustainably, because I'm also about sustainability as someone who has pushed their way through burnout. Uh, and so those 3 things are culture, compliance, and capacity. Like if those 3 buckets of things are not in place, we know an organization is actually not going to be as effective or have enduring impact because they don't have the foundational things that drive sustainable impact in place. So you've got to create some sort of framework for you that is a safety net for your leaders to take risks. Once we have a 3C organizational health assessment. So once we do that assessment, we let people know where they fall in all these different categories, where we need to prioritize, and where we have room to play. And that gives people a level of confidence about the types of risks that they can take. I know my compliance mechanism is set up. So if I want to push in this little way, I understand what the consequences are. And I know what type of capacity my organization has to respond to whether a founder is going to say, or a funder is going to say, no, we're pulling back money this year because we don't align with that. We know what we got to do to move forward. We know the culture that is most important to us at this organization. And I'm going to forget now whose quote it is, but there's a quote out there that says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I know if the culture isn't right in your organization, if your staff are doing the chatter around how y'all say one thing publicly, but internally is the exact opposite. If your board is dysfunctional, you're not going to make the impact that you need to make because no amount of strategy is going to be able to counteract poor culture. And so our leaders are able to make decisions about what they do, what calculated risks they take while weighing those 3 factors so that they don't take and jump into something that they're not ready for. They don't have the capacity to manage it. You know, Maya had this $1.6 million grant. Get out there, you open up all these different locations in different states, but you don't have the capacity to actually support them. You know, there's got to be a headquarters, there's got to be a space where people are really paying attention to all of these pieces that are required of a social impact business, your nonprofit organization, your nonprofit corporation is a business. And these big nonprofits, they run theirs just that way. And I want to encourage you to do that too. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be bad or not give out the work that you need to. There's a lot of money mindset, resource mindset shift that needs to happen in this sector to ensure that we treat money as the tool that it is and not some sort of reflection of who we are or our connection or commitment to the cause. We should not be struggling along with the folks that we are trying to help, because how much help can we give them if we aren't sure where our funding is going to come from, if we don't have the people in place to actually do the work? We have to be diligent about moving forward, and systems help us to do that. It helps us to be able to determine whether we're ready to take on a bold new initiative, whether we need to sunset some things, whether we need to sunset some people, coach them to a new opportunity because they are no longer aligned with the culture and the needs of the organization. And without a system to do that, it's very hard to make those decisions. And I have worked with a lot of organizations that are holding on to staff members and volunteers that are no longer aligned with where the organization is, what stage of growth that organization is. And having the wrong people in the right seats leads to issues. It's a car accident either way. And so I want to encourage you to think about compliance as not just avoiding penalties, but actually creating trust and credibility with stakeholders, is actually being able to give you a baseline metric to make decisions, to take calculated risks, to figure out how it impacts your culture. There is a culture of compliance and a way that we can actually make compliance a liberating aspect, unlike how it is often used as something that kind of beats people down. Like, there's actually ways to grow in a culture that prioritizes compliance and capacity and calculated risk and commitment and conviction in a way that actually moves our organizations forward. I'm curious for you. Definitely DM me, drop it in the comments. What bold decision could you make if you were 100% confident in your organization structure? If you absolutely understood how your culture was moving, what your capacity was, what programs you have that were effective, what people you had that were effective, what processes and policies you had that were effective, and that all this other outside regulatory stuff that you have to manage was in place. What bold decisions could you make as we're getting ready to head into an administration in a period of time where there's going to be a lot of uncertainty? There's going to be a lot of chilling attempts to keep us from being big and bold in the season. What decisions could you make, would you make, if you were 100% confident in your organization structure? DM me, drop it in the comments on this podcast. Let me know, because I want to support you to do those things. I actually want to support you to make sure that you're building that in place so that you can have the organization that you desire, and that organization can meet the needs and have the impact that we're looking for in the world. So let me know. We are, tight on time. I've been chatting. Y'all have been over chatting. So let me just say this last point around why we want to make sure that we're balancing vision and having a structure in place to avoid the pitfalls that Maya fell into. And that's the third thing, is that strategic oversight is leadership. True leadership isn't just about having the vision, although we need visionary leaders. I have a affirmation that I say to myself, that I'm a visionary leader, fearlessly driving for change in a world that is rooted in integrity, impact, and innovation. I also have an affirmation that I say to myself that is basically that I trust my bold ideas and that I am equipped with the wisdom and the strength to bring them to life. That I chase and pursue my boldest ideas. And so the only way that I'm able to do that is by having created systems for myself. Systems for me to determine when I go into partnership with someone, when I'm going to show up and do certain types of work, when it makes sense, when it doesn't. I have created a system for myself to figure that out. I work with my organization, my clients, to create systems. We have a compliance roadmap, and there are things that we check in on every single month and quarterly around compliance to make sure that we're growing. They have a governance roadmap, ways to think about how you're building and growing your leadership and ensuring that you're providing the level of oversight and respect and honor to the work that we're doing. And those things are sequenced out so that we have a path, right? There's a framework, there's a process to the movement, because it's my goal that in a year of working with me, that you are not only more profitable, or you're able to bring in bigger dollars for your organization and your ideas, but you also have a consistent way of delivering results, which helps to bring in more funds and all these things. It's a cycle, it's a flywheel of sorts. And so my goal is to really help with your infrastructure and your mindset around that, so that you can actually have an easier path to making change. And we already know, if you're here, that leading change is hard. It's hard work. So we don't need to make it harder for ourselves, which is why we need to think about leadership, not just in the vision, but also in the framework that allows that vision to last for generations. As the leader, it is your role to be building systems and creating alignment. A lot of times people try to pass that off to someone else. Maybe you have a COO, which is great. COOs, chief operating officers, can be very helpful in making sure that you have streamlined and you create the efficiencies in your systems. But just to be you create the system where they might not be fully clear on the mission and vision is a fool's errand. It's going to cost you down the road. You got to initially be a part of that process. Version 1 has to include you in the process to make sure that whatever other subsequent versions do not dilute the mission and vision that you led with in the first place. And I see this whenever the founding leader of an organization leaves. There's this crisis moment of identity where the organization's I'm not really sure what's supposed to be happening. because I didn't really understand the mission and vision as intimately as the founder. Even if your founder hasn't left and you're still there and you're like, I don't know why my board members do not go out and talk to their communities and be ambassadors and get other people here. Honey, it's probably because I don't fully know what's going on or what you're doing. And which means we need to make sure that those frameworks are there, that we're building systems and creating that alignment and communicating that to all of our stakeholders, both internal and external, to make sure we move ourselves forward. When you align governance and compliance and your vision, you can scale your impact sustainably. I am no longer excited about those people who are like overnight millionaires or overnight their organization takes off, they get a whole bunch of money, and then we don't hear nothing about them 5 years later because they've gone out of business. They haven't been able to sustain their impact. It's not helpful. I think that's also one of the big criticisms about charter schools and some of these other organizations that come in to help in spaces is that they're not sustainable. So the endurance of them, our ability to believe that they'll be there year after year is diminished. And that makes it hard for people to want to invest and work alongside you. And so we really have to make sure that we are thinking about how we build sustainably, which also isn't always sexy. And I will tell you, I struggle with this myself because I want it fast. I want it right now. I want to be at the top. And I get that others of you may feel that, like you're urgent about the cause or the community and the need that is there. And I want you to keep that urgency and add that urgency into how you build systems so that we can replicate the work faster. So the first time we do it, it's the hardest. The next time it gets easier. The next time it's easier. That's actually the concept of the flywheel. It's really hard to get it started, but once you get it cranked up, it's really easy to maintain it. And that is my goal for working with social impact businesses, is to make sure that the startup piece, we start up correctly so that you can gain that momentum over time. And that is why we offer a couple of services here. I'm always going to make an offer to you because, again, this podcast is to get you thinking about the things that you need to do. And I want you to turn that thinking into action and activity that makes sense and is aligned as effectively as possible. And so we have our monthly subscription that we use with our established nonprofits, the Impact Guard. And it really helps to safeguard your success, to really make sure that we have the compliance pieces in place, that we have the governance pieces in place, and that you have access to community and other like-minded leaders who are also leading change so that you can collaborate and not do this work alone. This is my biggest criticism of the nonprofit social impact in space, period, is that everybody is so busy trying to fight change and whole systems on their own that nobody gets far enough. And we can really actually do a lot better if we collaborated more. And so Impact Guard is our solution, our premium solution to help organizations do this. And it is especially right for those organizations right now who are maybe feeling a little concerned about what a Trump administration, a Project 2025 approach to social impact, to work related to women and children in marginalized communities, to people who are concerned about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and who have been doing that work and what that might mean in a administration that is bold-faced, antagonistic to that. We want to support you. And so I encourage you, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, wow, we might need some more support, I like the idea of literally, a full assessment to help me make sure we know what areas that lead to and leverage impact we are strong in and where we need to grow, that we can build out concrete plans and work on that with a trusted advisor. Like I mentioned, I was a nonprofit attorney almost a decade. And I've worked in nonprofits. I have seen a lot of different ways how things really go down. I have a huge commitment to making sure that the sector is on safer footing, that we're diversifying funding so that we can actually get to creating the impact that's necessary for our community, that our causes are not perpetual causes, that we can really start to see inroads and hopefully demolish some of the barriers that prevent people from living their fullest lives. And so I invite you to check out Impact Guard. I will drop the link in the show notes so that you can take a look at it. I'm going to be honest, it's not for everybody. And so if you're like, oh, that's not the right size for me, I'm not ready to invest at that level, I also want to invite you into the collective. The collective is bomb. That is our community and content space. We use that space to grow together to the place where we're getting more consistent resources and funding, and we're figuring out how to bring on the team that's necessary. And so I invite you also into that space. I'll drop the information there. Either way, those are one of two options. And if those are not yet ready for either of them, you're not sure, keep tuning into the podcast. Like I said, like, subscribe, share it with others, give me the feedback. I really use your comments to figure out what we need to talk about next, what skills we need to develop, what toolkits, resources I need to create and put inside of the collective so that you have those resources available to you. And you're not all on Google trying to apply an approach that may not make sense for your organization. So I love that you're here. I love that you're listening and you're tuning in and you're sharing feedback. I also want to invite you into deeper work, into community with me, because we're going to need it in the next 4+ years. Most certainly, absolutely. And if you are bold and committed to that idea, I want to support you in making sure that you bring it to life. Those are all the stuff that I've got. I want you to let me know your biggest takeaway from today's episode. DM me, leave a comment. You can even, do I have nobody did it. I'll put my contact information in the show notes also. Reach out to me. I'm here to support. I'm here to help. I have been very clear, like I mentioned in last week's episode, doing my own life edit about where I show up and how I spend my time. And I want to make sure that I'm supporting people really fully. And so it's the podcast, it's the collective, it's Impact Guard. These are the best ways for us to go deeper in the work. And I invite you to go deeper in that work with me as we build the future that we all truly deserve. Remember, bold ideas deserve bold systems. The bolder your idea, the more of a system and support that you need to safeguard it. And so I want you to not just be out there being bold, but actually make sure that you have the support that you need to grow and move your organization forward. Let me just recap today. Just 3 key points I wanted you to leave with. 1, vision without structure falters. 2, systems empower bold decisions. 3, strategic oversight is true leadership. And these are very important things for you to hold and think about as you're moving forward. And if you've been dreaming big, but feeling unsure about your foundation, I again invite you to check out Impact Guard or the collective. It's really built to support leaders like you who are ready to create lasting impact without sacrificing culture, compliance, or capacity. And again, to do those things in a way that is sustainable. That is my word going into 2025, is sustainability. The work is long and enduring. Many of us who have been fighting for change, specifically around racial justice, women's rights, et cetera, we are seeing and have continued to see that this path is a long path, and we have to have the tools in place to support ourselves, to make sure that when we are ready or need to step away, that we have left a guide, a framework for others to continue the work, so that we don't find ourselves in this moment we're at now, where huge advancements have been eroded and corroded and will ultimately possibly be pulled away. And so there is hope, there is opportunity for us. I believe that it happens inside of community, outside of the noise that is everywhere else. And so again, I invite you to check out Impact Guard. And if that's not the right size for you, to get into the collective. I can't imagine why the collective would not be at least a good starting point for most of you. And so please do check them out and make sure that you tune in as we continue to lead change and lead that boldly with full conviction and commitment. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Leadership Revolt. Remember, leadership isn't about following the rules. It's about rewriting them with audacity, purpose, and integrity. If this episode sparks something for you, share it with another bold leader ready to disrupt the status quo. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so we can keep building this movement together. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and go lead audaciously.